Good morning, everybody, and it is a Tuesday morning here, just a couple days after Thanksgiving, and just want to say welcome to Walk the Web. I'm Dr. Aaron Dishno, and I'm creating basically it's like WordPress but for 3D games, so that we can have games and 3D shopping stores and all kinds of stuff, but allow developers to create plugins and create sites for people and let this be the tool that you use to administer your sites and to help people work with their sites. But it includes multiplayer, it includes a bunch of different avatars and a bunch of extra functions you can use, all built on the Babylon engine. So welcome aboard, and we're going to jump right in. In the past couple days, one of the things we've been working on is we've been working on setting up an action zone that when you walk into it, it adds a animation to your avatar. So when it adds it, we want to make sure that you can see it added, and then also when you leave that area, we want to be able to get rid of it. I'm certain I know how to add them. I'm not so certain I know how to get rid of them, but we're going to jump in. We're going to do some work on this and see if we can't get it doing everything that we expect it to. So starting out, let's see, we have this. This is the action zone right here, and when we walk inside of it, what we're doing is, let me edit that action zone. There's a couple parts here. First of all, this action zone, we are able to add animations just by selecting them from the drop-down list and then clicking Add Animation, and it adds it. Thing is, we haven't shown the list yet of which animations are already added, and we got to fix a little bit of text here. And probably center that button's not so bad. Yeah, we'll leave it like that for now. But let's see if we can't fix a couple things in this form. So let's look for the form first, which should be right about this one. Nope. What is that? Okay, those three we do not need anymore right now. There's the class, there's that action zone. Here it is. Okay, let's see this text. We had some text up above it. Was it H4? No. Action zone length. Let me see those items right there like that. Yeah, let's see if we can't make it look like that by calling it class column 1. Okay. We'll find out if that does what it's supposed to. There we go. And the other part is we are going to load this on the load. We need to figure out a way to bring in those values and show them when you open this form. So opening the form, first of all, is, well, I'm going to copy that name because I'm going to need it. And then in admin tools, we have save, load, animations. And this is where, if it's load animations, this is where we're going to do both of these functions. So I'm going to say walk the web, load, action zone animations, list. That'll be a good name for that. Let me just save that name because I don't want to lose it out of my grip here. Create a new function. And we're going to call this is the name of the function we're going to call it. And what we're going to do in this section is we're going to, first of all, we're going to clear the DLL then we're going to go get the data and create a list based on which animations are part of this particular load zone. Just thinking of what's the best way to do this. Yeah, I know. I can either do a get JSON, go back to the database, and get just the animations that are part of this action zone, or whenever I retrieve action zones, I automatically get the animations that belong to it. So I kind of already have a process in place. If I come over here to my connect and get action zone, pass the zone ID to it, that's the only piece asks for there, and I should return JSON that will have not only the action zone data, but this particular one, avatar animations right here, that will be each one of the animations that are part of this particular part. Okay, so it's kind of twofold. If I run this process, I can also make sure that they're up to date, so we can kind of, well, we can check some things. Let's go ahead and I think we can use this one, because why not just call it by the action zone? We already know which action zone we're editing, and this will do exactly what we want it to. So it's connect action zone PHP, and we give it the action zone ID. So come in here, and we're going to do, it's not a drop-down list, but we are going to do something similar to this. Action zone ID equals, and that will be, we have this up here. Well, actually, we have it right here also. When I save some, we have the action zone ID. This is the current one we're editing, and that's the only time this particular function will be used anyway. So we can go that to get the action zone ID. Avatar animations, we are going to be getting the avatar animations, and we're going to be doing something else with it at this point. So let's go this. The first thing we're going to do is, dget, which is my document.get element by ID, and value equals blank. Then we're going to, we'll figure out everything we need this to actually say, but let's put it here and put a plus sign with it so that everything we add to it becomes part of it. We're creating a list, so what we might do is, well, we already had load avatar animations. I could do something that says loaded and then shows you the names of the ones that are loaded. That would kind of make sense. And in the same fashion that we did this last thing here, this one. This one. Same fashion we did this class right here, we could do same type of thing. I think I'm gonna need a line break after that. I think I'll do it here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that right here. That way we can set it where if response is not null, the response is not equal null. I could even check to see if the list has items, which means something's already been added, because you can get a response that's not null but it's an empty set. So I think I will right here check if response avatar animations length is greater than 0. Then we know we've actually found some records, and we will respond to that. Okay, and then what we're going to actually do with it, the only reason I left this here for a second is because we have the Z response, avatar animations, friendly name, and yeah, so we have some different things here. We can put this as the name that shows. Right here. And oops, I don't need two of those. Animation ID, we're going to need that in a second. I'm going to wrap this in a div only because I plan to add something else here in a minute. There's going to be a second div, and this one's going to be a button, and it's going to be we're going to create a process that allow you to delete it. Probably create a class. That'd be the easiest way to. I think we already have classes for right side, buttons, and red. Let's find out. I'm pretty certain we have a red right button. Let's check our styles, and I believe it's an admin. Find next. Oh, red isn't even in there. It's not in the admin CSS. That means I put it in the core. Okay, outline self camera, no. Browse control, cancel. Red button left. And I think there's also a red button right. If not, we're gonna, red button right. There we go. So if we do this right here, it will float to the right with a little padding, with everything you can imagine, and still work for us. Here we go. Oops, I missed by one. And let's put the class here. Also, let's change that to a double quote. We need some more bulk of what we're wrapping this in so that we can use single quotes in our line in here like this. We'll worry about the functions for that afterwards. I just want to see it actually do something. It'll be something like on click equals // WTW dot delete AZ delete avatar animation and action zone avatar animation, and then we're going to give it this value is what we're going to pass so we know which one we're removing it from. And that will be right. There'll be single quotes around it, and then we need double quotes to attach it here. That should put the value in where we expect it to. Okay, so now I can get rid of this extra stuff, and we want to put at the end of this line, well, we're going to put another div. And this one is going to use a class I created. Let's see if I can remember it. Class equals WalkTheWeb hyphen clear. That should give us a clear both, which anytime you use a float, you can use a clear both to make sure that it's going to start a new line afterwards. And let's see how I did with that. When we open this, we should get some type of value. We should have at least one value. Actually, we should have one value because that's what we loaded when we did this piece. And edit building, edit action zone. Let's go to the created ones, and we have an error. Cannot read property length of undefined. Okay. Response on this action zone. Let's find out what it's doing. We'll get there. We'll get there. We're almost there. I want to check and see that we're getting the value that I expect here. And then we're going to pull this action zone that we're currently working with and see if the values come up with it. This will give us the name of, or the complete string, so we don't have to try to recreate it. I want to make sure we're pulling the exact same thing that we plan to use. And if I do this, we get it right there. Copy that. https 3d.hp3d.net and that string. Okay, so we do have the values here. Action zones. There's one action zone. Oh, yeah, I messed that up. Let's do this again. The response is not null. And then I go in and check this. Avatar animations. See, we have right here, I can already tell this is part of it. Avatar animations. And this is value 1 or 0. So it is here. It is in the record set. Let's see what's going on. That would be getting the value. Those are all correct. I know they are. And what it didn't like was the length. The length should have been okay. Let's find out. Cannot read property length of undefined. Huh, that's interesting. Okay, so we've got something going on here. Let's figure it out. See, I know that right now we do have, I know we have data, and I know that it shows up correctly because this is what we're looking for, is this row right here. And that goes to there. That's avatar animations right there. And that should be the response underneath it, the array of values. So this avatar animation should be okay, and for some reason it doesn't like the length of the avatar animations. And let's figure out what's going on, because we did the same thing right here and we're able to get the list. Does it just not like me checking that before we do this? Let's find out. Let's take out that. Just curious why that'd make a difference, because we use it in the very next line. If anybody sees anything, jump in, tell me. You could probably save me a few minutes. Okay, edit the building, edit the actions, load animations, and yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, property undefined. Is the response itself a set? That would explain a lot, because we didn't use a set on the previous one. I can tell that really quick here. This, no. Yeah, this is it. Let's see. We are creating that within. We are creating a action zones set. Okay, I know how to do it. Let's go back to it. Hey, how's it going? Okay, so what I did was this particular one. It's this right here. We're actually looking at response 0 of action zone length. So if I check if this is greater than 0, now we'll catch it. Oh, doing good. Yeah. So what kind of stuff are you working on? You a programmer? Okay, that should get us here. Let's find out. See if we can open this up and see our list of items. Okay, edit building, edit this, and edit here. Animations, and it still didn't like that. Okay, fine. Let's see. I only have one on this page. This is the one I'm opening up, and it has a record. So what am I doing? We have action zones and then the list. Oh, that's what it is. I'm missing a word in here. It is action zones and then the number. That will do it. Sometimes you just got to look at the root of it. Thank you. Appreciate the compliment. Yeah, what languages do you use? This particular project, I did a lot of PHP and basically a ton of PHP and JavaScript, and the whole client end of it and everything else is all JavaScript. Everything gets rendered. This is the Babylon engine behind it, so basically Babylon in the background, and you know, I tried to make a CMS like the concept of WordPress, but for 3D games. That way we can have programmers create just different plugins, and you can have a scene and you can just drop the plugin in and you can turn around and use their code that they created for games. So it's kind of like building a puzzle. You can say, oh, I want this piece, and collect the good things that you like of what different programmers have created, and then create a scene and have, you know, make a game out of it. make games, make 3D shopping websites, or whatever you want. So I simplified how we do it and also trying to standardize a bit of how things are put into scenes. But because I use the Babylon engine, you can actually do everything from Babylon. We can do anything from Blender and import them into here. We actually have a media library and 3D objects, and you can just bring right in any of your Blender things, export them as Babylon, and then load them right into here, and then drop them right into your scenes. So kind of like this is the assembly tool, but also something that's very easy to hand your customer as a finished product. So if you create 3D shopping store, for example, or a game for your customer to attract attention to their products, then basically you'd be able to give them this whole thing, and then they'd have an interface to be able to edit it and do everything else. I simplified it into 3 parts. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, C#. Okay, yeah. jQuery, yeah. Okay, yeah, very cool, very cool. You're going to find that PHP is, if you're used to JavaScript, PHP notation is a lot the same in a lot of ways, other than, like your variables and stuff. You have to use, $sign before them, and there's some global variable things. But overall, the notation, like doing your if statements and stuff like that, works the same way, same brackets, same stuff. Since you've done C# also, you're going to catch on to it really quick. Yeah, they're not bad at all. I picked up PHP in just a couple days when I started it. It's been a while now, but definitely. Property 0. Doesn't like property 0. Why is it not liking property 0? I would think... Is it just the one? No, I numbered them when I created that. I'm over here lost in one of my own arrays. Oh, I totally get it. I totally get it. Programmers, we're a victim of our own circumstance. We like to jump in, we like to code, we like to do things, and you spend probably 5 minutes watching if it tells you an answer of something you're trying to search at the moment, and then you basically do things all the time and stuff and create your own projects. If you're interested, I do have this all open source, and so you can actually download this and build a game right on top of it as a plugin if you want. I'm working on a mini golf game, and it kind of helps because as I find things that I want to use for the mini golf game, then I add them in like different hooks into the JavaScript in different places that you can take advantage of from other plugins. There's all kinds of stuff that as I'm doing it, I just go, okay, hey, this is a useful tool, and I create them so that others can use them afterwards. But yeah, that's kind of the idea and stuff. Yeah, I get you. I get you. But yeah, we just basically I'm just jumping in and working on some stuff here and seeing if I can't create some tools that people can use and do different things. Like, for example, what I'm doing right now is when I play the golf game, for example, when I walk into a certain region, I'm going to need certain animations, such as being able to putt the ball and maybe pick up the ball after you get a hole-in-one, or celebrate, or whatever animations I want to use. Well, the thing is, once I'm done playing golf, I don't need those animations anymore. So what I want to do is I'm creating, this is kind of the way I did a bunch of stuff. Is this the future? I think it's gonna be. I think there's a good chance, if enough of us developers jump in and work on stuff, I think there's a good chance that it will. Thank you. Yeah, just like, WordPress did it for traditional websites. By simplifying it, a developer can focus on creating the functionality they want in a game instead of worrying about creating your logins, creating your interface, creating your avatars, creating your multiplayer functionality and all these other things. So by putting this in a platform above Babylon, okay, you can still use Babylon code in all your projects and directly into it, put things into scenes and stuff, but this puts a layer on top of it that tells it how to load when you walk up on things, how to unload if you walk away from things. But in that same way, right now what I'm working on is being able to load certain animations that I'm going to need when I'm near a certain, like I'm going to play a round of golf, I want to load up certain animations to my avatar, but then when I'm done playing golf and I walk away, I want to unload those so that they don't stay on the actual avatar. Well, I used Babylon Engine because of I want to make it friendly for brand new programmers, and Babylon had a lot of support. It doesn't mean we couldn't do something else with this same type of code for a different engine later on, but right now I kind of did it for Babylon. But at the same time, my background is I was the webmaster for the county of San Bernardino, which is the largest county by square footage in the United States. So after doing that for over a decade, I came up with this idea of being able to basically browse in 3D. The concept's this. When you open a web page and you have a link, when you click that link, it goes out on the internet, grabs the data for the web page, brings it back, and then renders it in the browser. Well, I had some crazy night one night many years ago, and what happened was I thought about it, and I thought, instead of clicking a link, what if I created an invisible box? Well, what you're seeing right here in this scene that I opened up even here is you're seeing the invisible boxes. There's one around me here, there's one here, there's one here, and there's one in front of me that I'm setting up to load animations. But the idea is this. When your avatar walks inside of the box, it actually goes out on the internet, just like you clicked a link. It goes out on an internet and it finds the source of whatever you're telling it to put there. For example, it could be a building, it could be it could be something small, something big, whatever. But for example, in my scene, I tell it, put this building here. And it can be hosted anywhere in the internet. That's the whole concept behind this. So if it's a building, for example, what'll happen, let me close this out so you can kind of see what's happening here. See this, all I have here is one cube. It's just one box. But notice how if I step out of there, it disappears, and when I walk into it, it actually appears. Well, what it's doing is it detects that my avatar has walked into this box. It goes out and it looks to see what it's supposed to find. Like in this case, it's a building structure. And it goes out, grabs the whole thing, brings it back, and then renders it into your scene. So the whole idea is it's almost like being on a conveyor belt, you know, a treadmill. As you're walking, it finds things that you walk into the box and it's close to it. Yeah, basically walking in an area into one of these, what I call action zones, is like clicking something. So just by moving around, I'm walking out of things and I'm walking into things, and I can tell it what to do when I walk into a box. So then I have some that are what I consider load zones, and they basically load stuff as you walk towards them. There's other ones that, for example, I have some that open doors. Let me bring open a different building here. And in this particular building, it's just a lodge. It's just a basic thing. And I'm not even facing it yet. Okay, so notice there's this button down here, only in admin, but you can actually turn off and on those boxes so you can see where they're at. Gives you an idea of where they're at. But notice that we're already in it, so basically this building is built. If I back up away from it, I have some things, for example, the stairs inside, and the windows on the outside all disappear when you go that far. If you go farther and you hit the next layer of box, then let's see how far we got to go here. Here it comes. There it is. And it takes out other things. And then finally, at the extreme distance, whenever you're the farthest away, then I take out the whole object altogether. And here we go. Now you don't have anything. Yeah, the concept is this. If you're walking around and you see something in the distance, you'll go, hey, what's that? And you'll go check it out. So let me just refresh the load zones. And notice as you're walking towards it, that's like, hey, there's something over here, you might want to check it out. Then as you get closer, you can, all of a sudden, you get more details like on the outside of the building. In this case, I added a little bit of framework, door. But as you go closer yet, and in fact, here, some of these load zones aren't there until it triggers to load them. And now here's the steps and rest of the framework and everything else. And you can choose what gets loaded into what thing. Right, exactly. See, when you do a game, one of the things that happens is, you have like a bucket. You say, I'm going to put this amount of data in a bucket, and you create a level for the game. So you build a scene that all fits in this general size bucket so that all computers can use it, or regular gaming computers can use it, or whatever. And the thing about it is, once you play that level, and okay, I beat this level to death, then you achieve it, and next thing you know, they empty the bucket, and then they load level 2. Well, in this case, what we're actually doing is we're taking the same bucket, but little by little, as you walk away from things, I'm taking things out of the bucket and replenishing it with different things on the fly as you walk. That way, you don't have to ever reload a whole new level of the game. You're actually just going one thing to another, and you're basically just loading things as you go. That way, if I walk up and I want to play mini golf, I load the mini golf stuff as you get close to it. I can get rid of the game logic when you walk away from it. So you're only playing it when you're in that region. But we can actually walk from one game to the next, or a 3D shopping store, or whatever. Well, the big concept is that you can have a game and businesses, instead of throwing these banner ads on your screen and everything else, basically they can put buildings in your games. We can, basically sell virtual real estate. Hey, I got a popular game. Oh, you want to put your business in my, your little store in my game? Well, then I'll charge you this amount a month, and you can make money off of having virtual real estate transactions saying I'll put your business into my game. So it's kind of like puts it into the developer's hands to be able to do that stuff. Now notice this action zone is a box sitting right here in front of the door. And when I walk into this one, it's a particular kind that opens doors. So notice right now, because I'm in admin mode, I can see the hinge, this little piece here. That's my hinge of the door, and then I attach all the door parts to the hinge. So basically, all you have to do in my tool is basically load it up and say, here's the door, here's the space that I'm going to make it open, and then attach things to the hinge. In fact, if I go into Edit Building, Edit Action Zone, and I select the front door, is the load zone that I have here. Now I can edit it. I can change the size if it's not opening soon enough and I want the door to open sooner. All I have to do is go down here, and the position of it, I can turn around and just change the size, and notice I can make it bigger so that it opens sooner when you're walking up on the door. There's also the hinge itself. I told it where the hinge is, and you can actually move the hinge to wherever you need it to be. So you position it. You can also rotate the hinge. Like if I rotate it 180 degrees, it's going to open the door the other direction. It'll open forward instead of backwards. And finally, what I do is down here, I tell it these are the parts that I have attached to my door. I have a handle and I have the actual door piece. So basically what I've done is I've made it where, okay, and if you want to add something else to the door hinge, you can pick a shape to add and basically hover over some. You can just click it and it now adds that piece. Oh, it closed something out. Okay, I'm still troubleshooting things, but that's the concept, is you can actually add different pieces to the door or whatever and make this whole thing work. So that's the kind of concept in different pieces. Since I'm working on some of the action zones, I may have tripped something on that part, but that's the kind of stuff I'll test before I release another updated version here. Okay, but that's the concept. We're just basically making it where it's a tool so you can build things, you can add them in, you can bring things from Blender, export as Babylon, drop them into scenes. Notice one of those particular objects is in here. I have a ceiling fan that's spinning. It's animated. Well, that particular item, if I right click it, I can edit it and move where it sits. For example, see, I can grab a hold of them, move them, and put them exactly where I want them to be. I can hit cancel, or I can update the location. The other thing is, if I go to my media library, 3D objects, I can look up that ceiling fan, which I believe is just right here. And I have the files that go with it, including the graphics, and you can update them just by uploading new pieces. Also, you can edit the animation. And basically, that can be whatever animation it was in Blender. You can tell it the frames, you can tell it what mesh moves. So if you had multiple animations with different meshes inside of your Blender object, you can control those here. You can even put friendly JavaScript names on the objects so that if you want to call them from some other JavaScript code, you can do that. We have some advanced options. They can have sounds coming from the items. It is 3D sound, so if you're wearing a headset and you turn and there's a sound going on, it'll come from whatever stereo version, direction you're facing. It also works for the distance that you go from a sound. So if you have sound it's linear to the distance that you go, so you can actually set it to, it gets quieter as you walk farther away and louder as you get closer to the sounds. So there's a lot of options you can do, and we can do that in any of our scenes. I'm just going to cancel changing that since it's working fine now. Okay. So that's the kind of stuff I've set up in this 3D CMS, So it does have some functionality, like here we open the door and then I can walk out. And because I walked out of that box, it closes the door after me. So yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell, some of the stuff that I've been doing with it and everything. And I just keep on building on it. I keep adding things. If you're working on it and you need something, then, hit me up. If you're following me, then I give you higher priority than if you're not. Yeah, so I basically help you. If you turn around and you need my motivation, hey, well, jump in, help me build a game. I'm building a mini golf game. You can help me with that, or you can build your own game, or, whatever you want to do. But definitely, it's pretty cool. I work on it pretty much every day. Am I working on it? Hey, you can download the code. You can create a site. We're going to be connecting them up. And in fact, what I plan on doing is I'm going to work on my mini golf game, and then what I'm going to do is create a scene for it. And then I'm going to invite developers that want to put something in that same scene. I'll give them a space. They can attach one of their buildings, and then they can build their building up to whatever they want it to be. I getcha. Oh yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of helpful videos, especially through Blender and Babylon, and I know Unity's a good product too. I'm not against it, believe me. The way I wrote this tool, I just want to show you this. I did my best in so many places to design it to have a standard. And the idea behind it is this. If we transmit the data that we're going to use between the servers in the same way. And that's what this connect directory is all about. Each one of these things are, like for example, my action zones. You can pull one, or you can pull many of them, or you can pull them by an object. So if you say, hey, I need this whole building, you can actually get all the action zones that are part of that building. You can pull avatars, you can pull building information, all the building molds, which are your meshes. We have our community level. Communities are your scenes. So you have your scenes, then you have your buildings, which doesn't necessarily have to be a physical building. Like I'm building the golf game, one hole is a building, just so that I can move them separately within my scene and decide where I want them to be. Okay, then we have dashboard. That's part of the interface. Molds by web ID, so you can decide if I need to bring in some different objects. So what I'm doing is I'm fetching the objects, but then I decide when they go into actual Babylon to render. So Babylon is good at, if something's behind you, it's not rendering it, and they make it as efficient as possible with using it. But what I'm doing is I'm controlling the stage before that, which says these are the objects that if you walked a little farther, you're going to want to load, and then I control which ones get put into Babylon and then pulled back out. So Yeah, so definitely that's a direction we're going with this stuff. And cool. And okay, so then there's also object animations, like that fan had the animation attached to it. We have sounds that we can transfer from one server to another. We have uploaded files, which we can have images that are files in our directory, but we can also have database held images. Database, put them in the database allows you to have more security around them, like only certain users, if you're logged in, would be able to get them, stuff like that. Web aliases are our paths that allow us to do things like if I want to set a path to a particular building, for example, I can do certain things here. Let me show you. In my settings, I have web aliases. Each one can create a certain scene. You can be a scene with a particular building loaded. You can have show just the building. So this would be like the path you would use to put it into another scene on some other server. Then you also have, like here, where it's this particular same domain, but it's a completely different community. So you can have multiple communities on one server, which are your scenes. So you can host multiple scenes, multiple domains, multiple buildings, and multiple things. I haven't talked that much about things. What the things are is, let's say I have a table and I want 4 chairs around it. Things are the table and the chairs and your avatars, your vehicles, it could be a bridge, it could be a statue, it could be anything you want that just gets loaded as part of the scene. But it's like you build it once and then you can use it many times. So they become very friendly for creating things. Now, things can be in buildings or they can be directly in communities. They get instanced. So, hey Eva, how you doing? Good to see you too. So basically, it's instanced. So every instance in the scene takes on the properties of the object that you created. So basically, I did a lot of control to make sure that we could instance things, that we can bring them in and actually use them and stuff. Then the buildings are instanced. So you can have things in the buildings, and then the buildings are instanced to be separate sets of them. So I've controlled it to that degree to put them into scenes and, really take care of a lot of stuff in that way. So, but that's where I'm at. So, basically I just keep building and I keep adding things to it, and, as I'm going, oh man. So yeah, so we can path out different things and make it available. So when I say this lodge can be browsed as this, if somebody wants, they can go directly to that lodge. Now, this concept, I'm not fully there yet on what I plan to do with it, but here's the concept. If somebody creates a building, for example, okay, I haven't set the starting point on this one to face the actual building, but let's say I build a 3D store, and you're in, you can basically go shopping there and everything else. We can drop this store into many different scenes, including on other servers. So, and you can even track your hits of when people see your building at a far distance, if it's up close, or even if they go inside. You can track those with Google Analytics just by setting in a Google Analytic number. I'll show you that later. But the idea is this. You put it in all these different scenes, and then if you load your building directly, for example, just bringing up the lodge without the scene, you can actually work, and anybody who walks into your building in any one of the scenes, you would see their avatar, and you can actually interface with them and talk and everything else. So if you want to work your store and have 30 locations out there on the internet in different scenes, you'll be able to do that. As a store owner, you can actually hire somebody to virtually be there with their avatar, work in the store, and connect with people. Isn't that the coolest thing? Yes, exactly. It's an independent, the building is an independent item, and it can be placed into many scenes, and everybody sees your version of it when they do it. Now they'll see your avatar in the building when they go to the different scenes, but at the same time, you will be able to see their avatars walk in just when you bring up the building by itself. So that's the way to get it from many different places so that you can interface with them. So that's kind of a really cool feature that I plan to add. We're not quite there yet, but we're almost. It's not that far off. so I'm doing some more work on the multiplayer to make sure that's all running smooth. I was just correcting some rotation issues with the avatars. In fact, that's why you see this little box on his head. Recently, I was able to attach different things to the bones for picking up things like the golf club or being able to pick up any object in a scene. So now I just have that showing for the moment because I was working with it. But I've created 8 different attach points that you can pick things up and attach it to the avatar, and you can even offset it or rotate it from those positions. Trying to think of every way you would possibly want to use it and then give you those tools so that you can build things with it. But yeah, so that's kind of the idea. You're able to do all these different pieces and Yes, they do. Yes. You're welcome. And basically, you can. Yes, you can. We can create things directly in here using basic tools. For example, when I go into here, I'm building this scene. I can come in here and just straight out edit the building, and I have things like I can add anything I want, anytime I want. I don't have my directions straight yet. Let me see where I put it. I put it off to my left. No. Oh, I put it. Okay, I just moved where the avatar is, so it doesn't know where the avatar is. So it's actually creating objects far away from where I think they are going to be. But we'll bring it back into here. That's the stuff I'm going through right now. So I have to tell it to actually build the objects directly in front of me whenever I create something. It's already in the version that you download. This is just something new because of the way I just moved things around. And it's below the ground. So let's bring up our, there it is. There's our sphere that we're building. Okay, and you can even come in here and go, okay, you can rotate things. You can size them in 3 dimensions. So we can put it any direction we want. You can also change it. You can pick a color for things. The color on the top, the color on the bottom, the color of the highlight from the sun. By the way, you asked me about my background. Okay, so I did webmaster for 10 years, over 10 years with the County of San Bernardino. The other part is I have a doctorate in education. I've been teaching classes at the university for La Sierra University, where I graduated. I've also taught at the local community college in the past, but I've taught computer programming classes, algebra, and I've even substitute taught all kinds of classes. But yes, so I have a doctorate. I love teaching. I have no problem taking on people that want to learn things, want to ask questions. In fact, it's my favorite. I love to answer questions. I love to help you learn. Join my project, like I said. You like turtles. Cool. You know what? Well then, my one thing is the goal is to not only make it where you can have these avatars that I'm creating, but the idea is that you'd be able to create your own avatars with the right bone structures, bring them in and use all the animations we have. So Eva there likes dragons. So turtles, dragons, different things like this. I plan on implementing it on 2 different levels. I plan on having it where you can walk around with your avatar and you'll have a pet that follows you. You can also make it where you are the thing when you're done. Thanks for the compliment. That's pretty good. But, I'm just trying. I'm a hack. I'm like a bulldog. When I'm working on this stuff, I just keep working on it till it works right. And when I see an error, I mark it down on my list and I go back, check it out, and try to fix it. So I'm constantly working my list, constantly doing updates, constantly fixing things. In fact, if you notice on the GitHub page, there's a place you can report errors. So if you see something it's doing wrong, you can tell me about it there and I'll jump in and fix it. Well, whatever it is. So basically, it's just one of those things. It's my pet project. This is what I've been doing, and I want to see it be. So basically, I just want to make this work, and so I'm bringing in anybody that wants to help me. And you never know. Also, just leaving it out there on the table. When this becomes a full-fledged business, it's already a corporation that I created just to do this whole thing. But when I start making some money and start doing things with it, then basically I'm going to look for people, and the people that worked alongside and did the stuff and already know the product, those are the ones I'm going to look at first to hire. So, it's always good. Always good. You know it. So yeah, make sure you follow me if you haven't, but we're definitely getting these things in here. Okay, so we can just drop objects into scenes. We can, there's a lot of pieces we can do. We can also tell it, oh, I want a texture on this, and you can do a combination of texture and color. So not only can you add, like here where the default texture is kind of just a background kind of bumpy thing, but you can also color them on top of a texture. As I tried things and I found things that worked, basically I just kept on adding pieces to it. So we can have, like here, a texture that has a color associated to it. That's just some of the stuff I do. Then I have under advanced options, me too. I know. I've got a habit of hitting exclamation point almost at the end of every one of my sentences, like it's so important, right? Oh, the other thing you can do in advanced is, remember I showed you these load zones? Well, you can pick which load zone you want it in. You can also create custom load zones. So, for example, if I build a building and I'm walking down a hallway towards a room, I can make the load zone go out into the hallway, but also include that room. So as you're walking down the hall, it's loading what's already in the room. So when you open the door, you already see everything loaded in the room. But yet if you're not in that hallway or in that general area or in the room, those things aren't loaded. So you can actually create your own custom load zones, and you can pick them for any object that you load. So whatever I pick here is when it's going to load. So if it stays in the normal zone, when I walk out of that box that's right there next to me, that object will disappear. If I go high, it's this box back over here. And if I go extreme, it's the box way back over here. So that's kind of the method of allowing things to load. Also, this is a neat one, force original graphic. If you have something, let's say I put a flyer up on the wall, and I want it to be the best quality graphic that you can imagine because it's really big on my screen or something, or whatever you want to do. If you say force original graphic by checking the box, it will always be the top end graphic that item used. Allow shadows on the surface will be inherit shadows to the object. Otherwise, it will cast shadows on things like the ground and other objects that have already been defined with this object. Select to reflect on water. So if I had water in my scene, I may want it to be able to reflect on water. These type of things just allow it to do that process. We don't want to overuse them. If there's no water in the scene, there's no reason to have that selected. So you wouldn't want the overhead of loading that all the time. That's why I made them checkboxes. If I create an alt tag for the 3D mold, when I move my cursor over it, it will say that on the screen. So it's kind of a way of like doing alt tags with images. So ADA compliance, if you're trying to make it so somebody that has visually impaired wants to move their mouse over things, they can help find things on the screen, then you can actually add tags. We'll just call this, for example, egg. And I don't know if I don't think I updated it right away. When I save it, it'll be there. And then the other thing is I can also scale and offset the texture on the surface. So if I'm trying to like put two pieces next to each other and like ceiling tiles, and I want the textures to match up perfectly, I have some adjustments. I can change their scaling and I can change their offset to make them look right. The other thing is we also have an opacity setting. So you can make it whatever degree of transparency that you want. So now it's a ghost egg. Okay, so you get the idea. The other part here is like when we have ovals and shapes that are circular or something, you can also set the subdivisions. Notice if I go bigger or whatever, let's go a little bit brighter here just so we can see it. This thing has 10 right now. I'm going to go less just so you can kind of see what it's actually doing. And notice it's becoming very rigid. You can see the point. You can see the rigid edges. You get the option to actually set how many subdivisions are used to create that object. So let's say you created something big, you'd want to make it more subdivisions. Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely, that's where I'm heading. I like that idea. Another thing I was kind of thinking is, as your avatar walks and he rotates, I was thinking about turning something on that will tell you the degree, like every 5 degrees of where you're turning, or even make it snap to certain positions. So like if you click once, you go from 5 degrees to 10 to 15 to 20, or 90-degree turns only, or whatever you want, and make it where you can set things like that. Because then maybe you would be able to walk up and line up straight on with the door or something. Make it note when things are 90 degrees off to your right or left or whatever. So there's some in the future, I'm sure, we can create a plugin that'll do those kind of things for visually impaired. And that would be a major enhancement for making it so that somebody is, visually impaired would be able to do a lot of these things too. Because that's my goal. I want to make it for everybody. And I guess all those years with the county where we created sites that worked on every browser, worked for everybody, and, all inclusive, that's kind of my background. So I try to make this work for everybody. I like using Google Chrome, but at the same time it works in all browsers. I try to write the code so that it'll work in all browsers. I'm sure some browsers do it better than others, but that's, they'll come around as we do things. So that's it. Also, there's one more thing down here. I did this really cool piece that allows you to merge shapes. So I can take one shape and then create a second shape and tell it to subtract from another shape or intersect it so that you only keep the intersection as your shape, or even combine the two shapes as one shape. And you can just create a second shape, intersect it, tell it to cut out, pick the shape by saying pick shape and click on it, and it'll be there. So that's a really cool functionality. And then finally, create a duplicate. If I come in here, first of all, you have to save whatever you're working on. But then if I right-click the item to edit it, and I come down here and I say create a duplicate item. Now, first of all, it's created it way out over here because of I've got that part off right now because I rechanged how I move things. But notice if I bring it back over here, you're right. No, I like your idea. Voice cues, definitely a good idea. And also we can do certain things like mouse overs let you decide that something can be clicked. Where if you're doing something else, it can decipher between objects that can be clicked and items that cannot be clicked. So when you're moving your mouse around a scene, you'll only see the ones that are interactive, for example. Okay, so I'm going to move this close to the other object, or even really close is my plan. I know I'm going to rotate it the other direction. And I'm going to rotate it this way just so we can kind of get an idea of what it's doing. And you can see how it's going through this other object. And I'm not afraid to test things while I'm doing things. So here we go. Let's take that object. We're going to click Merge Shapes, subtract from another shape, pick the shape to merge with, and I'm going to click this egg. Did it grab it? Yeah, it grabbed it right there. The only thing is if it's actually intersecting it or not. I don't think I'm intersecting it, am I? Yeah, might need to move it over. Oh, there's another tool that's also helpful. Avatar camera off. Now we can move around without the avatar. You can just basically hold the left mouse button down, move around, and you can use the scroll wheel to move in and out. Kind of gets you a quick, easy bird's eye view. You can pass through things so you don't have to go through doorways. Whatever it is. The idea here, let me make sure that we're completely intersecting where this object is. Why is it not moving it? Oh, let me guess. Do I have to be back in? Ow, something locked on me. I didn't like something I was doing. Or it's catching up. Yeah, no, I like where you're heading. I really like where you're heading. Oh, see, there's the cutout. We're starting to see where it intersects it. If the objects don't intersect, then of course they can't. Yeah, something's slowing it down. I'll work on that and we'll speed it back up. Okay. But yeah, I just want to make it where everybody can use it. So anything that can improve on those areas, I definitely implement it. We can implement it as a plugin, or we can implement it as core product. The idea is that, of course, you can load up an instance of it and then pick and choose what plugins you want based on what you plan to use that item for. Like if I'm going to run a 3D store, I may choose certain things that are store related. If I'm going to create a game, let's say a paintball game where you're running around doing paintball, I may not want to load other things, like this 3D store functionality. Why would I want that in my game? Unless I put a 3D store in, then I would include, any dependencies that it has. So that's the kind of stuff that we do, creating the different pieces. Oh, and by the way, once I put that item in here and it's basically something that's cut out of the other item, well, the one thing you can do is you can click merged and see the items that you that are cut out of other objects. Oh, and look here, from this angle, they're not even touching. How funny is that? Okay, that would explain part of what I was doing. Take this one, and if I move it, the moving isn't moving smooth. Let's refresh the page. Some of this stuff is, still working on it. Some of the stuff is good. Some of the things, when I'm working on one area over here, I break some over here, then I go back and fix them all. So it's kind of like one of those things where, there's a constant working on one piece or another. I'm going to right click this, but notice how it says egg whenever I highlight it. That's from those words. It can be click to do this or whatever you want those words to actually say. You can add JavaScript so that when they click on something, it automatically does a JavaScript. Like I said, I try to make it as versatile as possible so that you have the most control over what you want it to do. Okay, let's see if I go this direction. Oh, it created a second one. There's part of my problem. Okay. Save sphere. I don't need this other one out here. I've got something that's actually every once in a while creating a duplicate object, and I'm going to work on fixing that. But in the meantime... Okay, so when I edit this object, notice show advanced. I'll see it says subtract, but it doesn't have the object. Let's get the object in there. Save sphere. Okay, now if I turn off the merged object, I think if I see this from the right angle, I should have made it such a small object. It's not necessarily showing. It's indented on this side where the other sphere connected. Okay, but there's shapes that everybody can use. Not only are there building blocks, these are the building shapes that everybody can use, and we can always add more from Babylon. There's all kinds of shapes. The other thing is web objects. I created all these things that Blender already has, not Blender, sorry, Babylon already has available. So we can do things like, for example, particle spheres and candle flames and a flag, a tree, a light bulb, a Babylon file. So you can use any one of those Babylon files that you upload on your own. There are things like smoke. If I add smoke, okay, at least that one came in a little closer to where I'm at. And basically what happens is I now have this smoke object, and I can put it anywhere I want something to smoke. And it'll be wherever I put it. It can also, you can also reshape the funnel size by here. So if I wanted it to be wider, it can actually come out in a wider display just by changing the shape of that. Hey, and Arcade Soft, thank you for following me. I appreciate that. Okay, so yeah, and the shapes anybody can use. So in this case, we have smoke, for example. So there's some things that are more animated and have actual stuff. Those are all your web objects. And then, like I said, when you're editing, like I could do a particle shower. Now, it created a box. What's going on? I may have not finished that one yet. It's doing a box position. I don't think I finished defining that one. I'm sorry about that. I used the particle shower, actually. I created it and added it because I used it for the avatars to come in. I probably shouldn't show it on this list until I've finished adding it the rest of the way. But we have things like, like I said, Babylon file, and then you just basically select your 3D object, and you can put in, I did one for Halloween. Here's a good one to select. And let's see. It's going to load the object. Let me bring it a little closer. Oh, what is he, real tiny, or is he not loaded? Let me find out if he's going to load. I'm going to... Oh, he loaded really big. Didn't even notice his foot up there. Okay, this guy needs to be about 0.07. I think is the size I want him to be. Some of these files are very big. There we go. And now we have the guy, and he has an animation, and I believe it loads after we finish messing around with him here. If not, it's something I just haven't added yet, the ability to fire off the animation. But we can add objects that were created in Blender that easy. Save the object, and he's good to go. He doesn't have the animation loaded yet. Okay. I'll have to set it up where it automatically does. The bigger the better. Yeah, you got it. Yep. And, another thing I can do is whenever I'm starting any one of these scenes and doing something, see, there's his animation. I knew he had an animation going. The other thing you can do is, let's say for this building, I can come over here and say, when somebody starts this scene, I want them looking this way, and all I have to do is options and settings. I can say set starting position, use current position. Now anybody opening this scene will start facing the building looking just like this. So it's that easy to set. And you can do that in communities. You can also make it around things. Couple other things. Building snapshot. Basically, you can move your camera. In fact, you can even detach it from your avatar. You can move your camera wherever you want it to be. I don't want to show the load zones right now. Nice and clean. I can say, well, here's what I'm showing off. This is my item that I built, and I can set the default snapshot, and it will take a new picture and put it here. The picture is actually twofold. First of all, if I take this snapshot, and I've just done this thing, so this is my snapshot now. When I give out this link, for example, you know how, oops. Okay, when I go in here and I say settings, and remember when I told you web aliases, you can give out a link like to this lodge? One of the things is if I pass that to like Facebook or whatever, that image becomes your default image that Facebook sees. So like if I post this on Facebook, that would be the image everybody gets on Facebook to click the link. So I've tied those with all the meta tags on the pictures and images and different scenes that you have. If you're in a community, the community scene gets shown. If you're in a building, the building scene, and then the thing gets shown. Okay, just so you know. So that's kind of a cool concept about that. Developer tools. This is kind of cool. First of all, these first buttons are the same thing you have down here for the most part. There's list loaded objects. So in any scene when you're working on things, you can say like, oh, I want to see what building molds are loaded. You can click this and it'll tell you the name of every single item starting with the word building molds. And this is the name of the object all the way through the word box. So you can get the name of anything that's loaded on the screen. And this number 117, that's the instance of this object in the scene. So if you had two of the same buildings in the same scene, there would be two different objects for, two different instances. Okay, so you have that. Another thing you can do is list all current meshes. So that one will show you everything in the scene that's loaded. Everything from my avatar, connecting grids, and the action zones that are loaded into the scene. Building molds. Here's some more of my avatar. Here's some more building molds. But you can actually troubleshoot things using those different tools. If I want just a list of action zones, for example, you can click on List Action Zones, and here's all the action zones that are loaded. Not only did I show you the action zone, I tell you what its parent is. I also tell you if it's shown currently in the scene and what the status is. Status 2 would mean you're in the zone. Status 0 means it's not loaded, or actually shown would be that. Status 0 means you're out of it. Status 1, I believe I set it up to be if other avatars are in the zone. But there's a couple different things depending on what you're doing. And notice this one has a friendly name of Extreme Load Zone. This one says High Load Zone, High Load When Near, or Load When Far. And then there's a normal, Load When Near. So I'm telling you a little bit of information about the different objects so that you can troubleshoot stuff. There was one more piece I should tell you about, and that's connecting grids. Picture a scene. The second you open up the scene, one of the first things that you need is you need the pin drop of where you're going to put certain items. The connecting grid are those pin drops. So what happens is you get a scene and you say, I want to put a building here. So let's go ahead and let's look at one of our communities just so you can kind of get the idea. Okay, come on, wake up. Oh, I'm listing communities, sorry. Communities, select community. And let's say, I'm just going to pick this one because I know what's in it. Now, for anything that you put in a scene, for example, in this case, let's see what we have here. Come on. There we go. We have a couple objects in this scene. So I have, for example, this building. If I right-click the building, I can move what I call the connecting grid for that particular building. Each thing that you put, thing or building that you put in a community or thing that you put in a building, each has what I call a connecting grid. That's the map of how we connect and drop things inside of other things. So what we have is this. Let me just give you the overall view of this. First, you have the scene, and then I say, I want to put a building here. And when I add it, it has a position. So right here, we're at this position. And notice if I move it, the whole building moves. And also scale. So I can make it whatever scale I want it to be. Here we go, the Giants house that Jack built. So you can scale the item in 3 different dimensions. You can also rotate it on any one of these dimensions. The connecting grid, the one single box, it's a 1 by 1 by 1 box, is what I use for connecting grids. That way, when I take this building and I parent it to that box, any place I move the box, the whole building moves. If I scale the box, the whole building scales. If I rotate the box, the whole building rotates. That's the object that I use to connect things into scenes. So then, when I create a new scene, the first thing I do is I show in the scenes the connecting grids that are within my range of my avatar, a certain range. Yes, you got that. You got that right. So the model's just the model, and then the data is built into the grid. Yeah, that's attached to the model. So the building has local coordinates to the building. When I edit the building, I'm on 0, 0, 0 on the grid, and I build it up. Then when I put it in here, it can be offset. For example, in this case, I did it on 0, 0, 0 of the community, but it's offset by 5.5, 5.5 up to make it be on this level ground right here. So then I scale it to here. So then any calculations in the building have to go to the community when I'm walking around in a community for it to be world grid points. And there's ways to connect and find things and to detect where objects are based in the world view opposed to the local view of the item that you're working in. Okay, so there's things like that. And also notice it's rotated a negative 90 degrees. So that's the direction the building currently sits. You can hold these buttons down, by the way. You can do some fine tuning with these buttons, to do things. Or you can actually just go over here and type a number, and when you move off of it, it takes that number on. So if I come in here, I can go negative 90. I can move my cursor off of it, and it automatically takes on those values. So it's an easy way to, just quickly update values and do something with it. But yeah, so that's what I call a connecting grid. There's some advanced options. Oh, this is kind of advanced to what we've been talking about. Excuse me. But since I talked about action zones, picture the community has action zones, load zones, and you tell it load when you're far away, extreme, load when you're far, the high zone, and then load when you're close, the zone. Well, the community zone is, as big as the community usually. And you can create zones inside of the community to load things when you're in this area opposed to this area. So that works the same way as the buildings. But now picture this. When we look at the zones, not only do we have the building zones in front of us, but we have the community zones too. Yes, exactly. Well, when you view just a building by itself, then I create the main parent, which is the building in that case. When I create it in a community, I create the main parent, which is the community main parent. So the community is the world grid. When you load just a building, the building is the world grid. When you load just a thing, the thing is the world grid. But when you put them together, the parent of whatever you're using, that contains the world grid. I set a value in the settings. By the way, there's a couple files you're going to want to see to help get around in here quickly. Connect is anything that reaches to other files. So when you're reaching from one server to another, that's where I put objects that basically give out JSON. So if somebody else, if we ever decided, hey, we want to build one that works with Unity, or we want to build one that works with whatever technology we want to as the engine, 3JS, whatever it is, if we want to switch engines and do something different, we could take this same code, switch out the pieces that made this Babylon, and because the Connect supplies the same exact data structures in JSON, we should still be able to connect them from one to another. That's the standard I'm creating through doing this stuff, is to make sure that when they connect from one to another, they understand how to connect and what to use. Okay, so then in the core. In the core, I'm going to go through some of the scripts first. In the scripts directory, we have, okay, so you have core, and then here's my core code. This is where I do all my coding. This in the connect directory is where I do all my coding, basically. Anything in content are either standard files, like I give you some default stock images for textures. I created the avatar, default avatars that comes with. You'll find that kind of stuff in content. And anything you upload and use within the program always happens in the content directory. Including plugins are located in the content directory. So we have plugins and, the other things all located there. Okay, so in the core, these are the core files that make it work. All the JavaScripts are in the script directory. Starting with engine, that's where we have all the Babylon engines. We have the Babylon engine. We have the different procedural textures. We can get to those later on. We have some GUI functions, so you can create a GUI within Babylon. We have different pieces, like creating Bluebird, I think, is part of the text objects. If we create lettering, they did some. Canon is one of the physics engines. The Wemo is another physics engine. We have loaders, we have hand.js, we have earcut, which does some extra functionality. Some of these things I took advantage of, PEP. There's different ones for different things. I load a handful of them when we do it. Some of these other things can be enabled very easily in your instances. So that's the core, and I do not write anything in any of the core engine products. When they come out with updates, I update them to the system, and we try to stay on the latest versions and stuff, and we do that. But at the same time, it's always in the engine directory, and it's as is, no modifications to their stuff. Anything I modify or change or add or do whatever is in my files, which are the rest of these. Prime is our core files for the most part for browsing. It starts with core. If you looked in the core file, the first thing you're going to see is a init load sequence. This gets called from our PHP init session. This one is where it tells it what to do and what to get started, and basically it sets up the properties of what you've loaded, and then everything else is JavaScript after that. In fact, there's PHP that generates JavaScript in that init file. Okay, so the core starts off with init load sequence, and it inits the environment. And if you look in the order, init environments here, then it loads the avatars and sees if you have checked your avatar. And if you haven't created an avatar, it lets you select one, does some setup mode stuff. When it's done with setup mode, it runs this sequence, which will be load init settings, user settings. So like if you've saved any cookies for which view you're using, or anything like that. Then it goes through the user canvas, which in my case, we're not using a lot of it right now, but if you were to turn on the compass or the mold count, or if you're using first person view, sometimes you like to have something to line up with doors. That kind of stuff is available. If you turn these on, then you have a compass, and as you move, the red bar always points to the closest building, and it always tells you what it is down here. So as we're walking, it's telling you you're in this community and this is the closest building to where you are. And the red will always point towards the closest. Later on, we can make it where, hey, if I'm searching for something, it'll point you in that direction and let you get there. So we can do some stuff like that with it later. The other part is, notice I can tell it the mold count and also the frames per second that it's currently running. So admin mode, just so you know, is heavier weight than the when I'm working with the browsing mode. Browsing mode is as fine-tuned as I can possibly get it so that end users get the best, fastest, cleanest experience. But when you're working in admin, thanks, I try. I've been working on this a while, and I really do try to, get the pieces in place. And I just want people to use the tools. So if we can build more into this, and if other programmers want to join me in deciding, if you see something in the core and you say, oh, look, if you do it this way, it works better. Boom, I'm into it. change the code. I'm married to the project. I like my project, as you can tell, but I'm not married to the code that makes it work. I will change things when they run better. I will fix things that are broken. I will uproot whole code and rewrite it when it needs to be rewritten, when there's something better that I can do with it. I do whatever I need to make it run the best I can. Okay, so let's see. Where else are we here? I'm going to backtrack out of that. And, so there's a lot of pieces here. But like I said, we have the connecting grids are our points that tie where everything's at, and they tie different objects into our scenes. Then from our connecting grid, on those connecting grids, it has different, that's what I was going to show you. Here we go. So there's a connecting grid in the center of this building, and if we right-click the building, we find it at this point. If I want to edit the building, I actually have to open the building in the editor. I'm only working on either one community, one building, one thing at a time when I'm editing them in this tool. Keeps it simple, believe me. The thing is, if you scroll down to the bottom of the connecting grid, it always gives you the option, open 3D building in editor. So if I right click it, I can click there and it'll open up this item in the editor, and I'm working on that building. So it's real easy to go back and forth and actually click on the particular one that you want to work on. Makes it real simple, real straightforward. So what we had was, as I mentioned, when I look at the different zones, the community has its 3 default zones and any other zones that you've added, but also the building still has its 3 zones. Now, even this chair right here has 3 zones around it. If I back up far enough, you're going to be able to see, let me see if I can see some of the zones around the chair specifically. Not necessarily. In fact, we might still be inside the zone for the chair. I don't know. There it goes. It disappeared right there. So whatever zone's right in front of me, sometimes you have to trigger them to turn them back on. Okay, when I walk inside of a zone around here, that chair started. Now, there's something else I can do. When I edit, for example, this chair, and notice it's the position, it's the connecting grid. So it's the position, size, and rotation, whatever I had for that chair. One of the things I can do, default means use its original 3 pieces, right? 3 different, a near, a far, and an extreme grid for that particular zones, action zones, load zones. One of the things I can do is override it, and instead of using those zones, I could use a zone that's in this community. Since the connecting grid's in the community, I can pick a zone from the community and let it load when I'm in that zone. So if I do that, it eliminates the 3 zones that chair has. So I can say, hey, when I'm in the normal load zone, load when near, I want it to load this object. Now, I don't remember if I made it automatically update or if it's only when you reload it. But let's go ahead and reload this scene just to do it. Some of the stuff I'm, doing it where it hot swaps it and fixes it, so that you don't have to refresh your screen in admin mode. There's a few places where you still have to refresh the screen, but in the long run, I'll eventually have knocked all those down. I try to make it where basically you don't have to do that anytime. So that's my goal. Okay, so we have this chair. And I'm going to refresh the zones just so that we have it. And notice now it's going to be directly attached to this inside zone, which is my normal zone. Oh, that's the building one, sorry. Oh, I forgot. It's part of the community zone, which is much bigger here. So it's part of this normal zone, which ends right about, where is it? I'm underwater now. Oh, there it is. So that's where the normal zone ends. Okay, so the community is that big. I just had to find the edge of it. And when I walk, notice the chair appears. I'm inside of that normal zone. And also it triggered the extreme zone of the building to go about that same time. So that's just one of the things I did to be able to overlap and to combine things. So if I want that chair to only appear within a short area and not use 3 zones, all I have to do is create a load zone, put it around this chair wherever I want it to be. set it whatever size I want it to be, and then I can tell it this chair to use that load zone. And anytime I walk inside it, it'll work. Anytime I walk outside, it'll get rid of that item. So it's a way of managing, because notice that right now, there's only 77 objects loaded. That is really easy to run around in a scene at a pretty fast speed and everything else. By the way, when you see my frames per second, you have to remember I'm not only running this scene, but I'm also streaming. So there's multiple layers of what I'm doing. So my frame count isn't great, but when I browse the site without streaming at the same time, more resources of my processor and my graphics GPU are available, and that speed is, a normal speed you would expect in games. Okay, so, but as we come in here, notice now we have 131 things loaded because we've loaded some stairs. Why is it freezing? Okay, I know what it is. This is something I did originally, and I'm about ready to change it. If I'm walking, for example, and I move my mouse off the screen and I move it out of the active window, yeah, I gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. Just like I have a computer with a bigger monitor, and I have 2 monitors hooked up now, but I have a computer with a bigger monitor, and when I use that one, I can't stream and show scenes at the same time. So this, that's why I have to use this computer when I do that. But it's, not a problem. This computer is actually really fast and really nice. So just smaller screen for my main one that I'm browsing on, that I'm using right now. Okay, so let's see. Oh, so when I'm walking and moving, when I take my mouse off the screen, like let's say I'm moving forward. Okay, if I'm walking forward, when I take my mouse off the screen, he stops. Even though I could even have a key command down, he only moves when he's on the screen. And so that was something I did to make it like it's not quite an autopilot for people when they want to move around. The only thing is, when I do that, I may have times when you need to move your mouse over something to do a particular thing. Like here, I've got these animations, by the way. You can tell it to run different animations. Yeah, doing the swim dance. Okay, so, but being on the screen or off the screen kind of, like I said, shuts off the animations. I may override that and make it where it works more often. The reason I did that is when you move your mouse over this, I don't want the click-throughs to click things in the scene. So I actually disengage the scene so that you can work the menus here without having to protect and say, don't do pass-throughs on every single object in the menus. So it became a friendly way to do it. I'm still rethinking if there's a better way or not. Yeah, so we'll get to that later, but it's not an immediate problem. Oh, and one of the things I'm working on also is multiplayer settings. When somebody comes into the same scene that I'm in and they load up the scene, basically you see the other person. And you have the option to say how many people are the max avatars. They're judged by which ones are closest to you. And you can also see if IDs are on or off. It'll have a name tag above their head so you can see what their set name is for their avatar. And you can also disengage multiplayer, which will turn it off, and your computer runs a little faster without having to do that the whole time you're using it. But that's just a couple things that I have available. It's actually using web browsing as a sync for it by default on the distributable version. What I plan to do is a Socket.io version that runs a little bit more efficient, and then implement that as a paid service that if somebody wants to use it for their site, they can just pay a certain amount a year, some nominal fee to cover my costs, and then they can use the Socket.io from me. But we'll get to things like that. I'm not there yet. I'm working on it. Well, as you can see, there's a lot of pieces here. There's a lot that I've done. There's, I just keep adding to it. Every day I work on it, I do something new. I add new features. I keep moving it forward. 6 months ago, we didn't have avatars. Now we have avatars. And as of about a week ago, we can pick up things with an avatar. For example, I designed him to be able to pick up a golf club. And I'm working on some animations to help when you're like doing gameplay and you want to move into certain areas or certain scenes. Let me first get this guy here. There he is. So I walk into this scene and I go, oh, I want to play golf. If you click on the handle of the club, I have it going into his hand. Now it's attached to his hand, and anywhere he moves, it's with him, including if he's walking. Notice the golf club moves just fine with him. So there's way, and it's offset so that it looks like it's in his hand, and I angled it down. Those are the kind of things I'm giving, of course, for everybody else to do. So that for you, if you want to pick up something when you click on it, all you would have to do is just like I did in the plugin. I have an on-click event. I tell it, if you pick up something that has the name Golf Club Grip, here's an offset that I want it to be in his hand. There's the scaling of the golf club, and here's the rotation that I found works well. And then I do pick up object. I tell it my avatar's name, which this is the name of my avatar always. Yeah, you got it. You got it. And then picked name is the object that you clicked on. So you got that passed into this function just when you clicked on something. And because it was that particular name, it puts pick up object. This is the avatar. That's the name of the object you're putting in his hand. You can tell it where to connect it. For example, right hand. I've got a handful of different ones. And then you pass this Z offset that allows it to be in front of the hand instead of through it, and also angled at the right angle for usage. So you can scale it and everything else based on the point that it attaches. So on my code, I have this picked up object item. And in here, what I do is I take the avatar name, mold name is the item you picked up, the joint that you used, and then I find the joint and attach it using the scaling that you did for your offset and your rotation and your positioning. And that's it. I parent it to that object. We'll make one that is real easy to, drop that afterwards. Okay, so next I'll have somewhere you can set something back down, and maybe it'll find its original position that it was in, or you can tell it to default to wherever you drop it, just hit the ground, apply gravity and drop it to the ground, whatever you want to do, or just leave it sitting upward, whatever you want to do. We can actually have it stay in the position you tell it to release it. But there's going to be ways to do it. The other part is in my basic avatar. Let's see. Here's in the prime, like I said, I start with the common code, the core, and then common is all my common functions. We have the inputs, so there's your mouse buttons, your mouse clicks, your keyboard, your touch screen, your anything goes through the input. It'll tell you what code is running each thing from there. You'll be able to see where they go to and what they do. There's cameras. All my camera functionality is in one file. I have constructor. Here's where you can find anything that starts with WTW dot, and then here's your variables. There's different ones. So you can see if you're in admin view, for example. You can tell if they're using it in admin view or not. There's different cameras. There's sizing X and Y of your screen. There's your mouse X and Y that are tracked all the time. You can track your movement since you clicked on it, your starting points when it moves and to where you're at now. There's all kinds of cool stuff in here about dragging items on the screen. I have your walk speed that you're moving, your animation speeds for your walking and turning. There's all kinds of cool stuff here. You always have like your closest angle and closest distance to the next object. So that's what we're using to track the building that's closest to you. There's your FPS. We have a bunch of different objects in here. Everything else gets added to this WTW function after the fact. So when you go in the rest of these files, this gets added as WTW mouse click. And that's all the core stuff. Any other, people create things in JavaScript, they'll create their own class and be able to use it throughout all their code. Okay, so the constructor is the constructor of the class. Another very helpful one is the object definitions. You can actually find these in two different places. One is object definitions. You can come in here and for anything we create, for example, a mold event is an animation. Object animation, there's another type of animation. We have adding molds into the queue, right along. An upload file, this is the stuff that it has. Here's a connecting grid. It tells you the class and you can see exactly the layout of the class and default values for everything that goes in when we use a connecting grid. For example, if you're looking for, hey, I need to know the ID of the connecting grid, well, there it is. It's connecting grid ID after whatever connecting grid group it's in. And from the constructor, there are some arrays here. We have things, buildings, communities, thing molds, building molds, community molds. You got it. It really allowed me to use less comments. I wanted to use plain English in the code on purpose so that when you see something, you already know what it's related to and you can tie it in and follow the code. And I didn't have to do as much comments because when you see something, you go, oh, that's the community molds. That's the building molds set. That's the thing molds. Now remember, this isn't necessarily what's showing on the screen. This is the preloaded stuff and what's showing on the screen. It's a definition of anything that could potentially be needed and the ones that are currently on your screen and being used, just depending on what action zone you walked into. Okay, so then we have connecting grids. We have action zones. Automations are something I played around with. They're not perfected yet, but it was a way to sequence things like, hey, rotate twice, then do this, or on your rotation, rotate 30 degrees, stop. Wait 10 seconds, do another thing. So I was able to sequence out animations and stuff. So automations were part of that little playing thing. Mold list, that's the list of items that you can add to a screen. That only gets used in your admin. Key pressed. This is, if you press a key, you trigger something, those items get translated into the avatar's movements, and the avatar movement and animations happen because of what was pressed and added to that array right there. Last move events helps me track the current move events. I know it's mold events. Mold events are your animations, so you can actually see a list of all the animations that are currently loaded, waiting to be used or being used. It also lets you start and stop animations because underneath this class is the running instance of them. So that's a way that I can go into mold events, see which ones are running, stop certain ones if I need to, start others, delete others, whatever I need to do. It's all in one place. And then, of course, last move events. There's this thing where when your avatar moves, they have an ease in function so that he doesn't just stand there and all of a sudden he's doing one, like walking, and then all of a sudden he stops and his legs are all of a sudden back, where it eases into the walk from an idle position and then afterwards it eases back into the idle position. I have to track the last move event so that it knows it's no longer in keys pressed, which are what I'm trying to do right now, but it was one that's still lingering behind because I haven't finished weaning it off yet. Then it disappears after it gets weaned off. So that's why that one's still there. It's part of the easing function. Okay, so those are the arrays. And now that you know that, when you come in and you look at the object definition, some of those make sense. The connecting grid, for example, connecting grids can either be when we start a scene, for example, the very first dot on a community or dot on a building or dot on a thing is the initial connecting grid right in the middle to start that scene or start that building or start that community. Then other ones after that can actually be loaded based on an action zone ID. So I don't even tell it to load this connecting grid until they're in this particular zone or whatever. I can tell it to do stuff like that. And notice this is a parent-child relationship. Here's your parent item. Here's your web item. Oh, another important thing you're going to see in my notation of how I write things. By the way, this is probably going to be a popular video of anybody that wants kind of a walkthrough of the code and really get the hands-on of what's going on. This is going to be a good video for that. But here's something else. In this case, connecting grid ID. If I look in the table for connecting grids, I could find connecting grid ID. Okay, those are my 16-digit alphanumeric random lettering numbers that I use, random characters. Then it tells me there's a parent ID, and in this particular case, there's a type that's a community, and then there's a child. Whenever I say web ID, web is my termination, meaning could be a community, a building, or a thing. They're all web components, basically. So web ID could be any one of those things. When I say web type, it's going to be community, building, or thing. Okay, so this is telling it I have this community and put this thing in here, and here's my position, scaling, and rotation. Real straightforward. And notice this one gets loaded in this load zone. So that's telling it when to trigger and load it. This alt load zone is when we selected from default for the thing, we told it to be a particular one in the community. So this load zone would be the one for the thing. This one, if it exists, it uses this instead. This one would be an action zone that's in the community. So just so you understand that part. Okay. But see, I use connecting grid ID. Every one of these tables have an ID. But when you look at the code, there's not only an ID, but there's an IND. That's index. The reason I did that is ID tells you the structure, what came from the tables and everything else. The index allows it to be versioned. So that's your instance of that object. So if I place the same thing in a room, for example, the connecting grid could be used more than once, but the index will always be unique with the combination of that connecting grid. So it tells you which one it is. Now, I know this is getting kind of complex. You'll learn it as we go, but I just want to have it on this recording so we can review it later or look at it again or share it with others and stuff. But I know when you go to Developer Tools, for example, and you list loaded objects, and I say, for example, building molds. Okay, first, there's a building mold here. 0 is the IND, so that's the index. That would be the building mold's IND. If I use that 0, I could go to the array for building molds under 0 and pull it up. So thank you, I appreciate that. Awesome, thank you for following. I really appreciate that. And so what happens is this. If I see the name of an object, let's say I click on something in the screen, well, that 0 tells me go to my array for my building molds and item number 0. My index number is 0, and I have the rest of the definition of everything about that building mold. I have all the properties, everything there is to know about it. Then this ID right here is the ID that you would find in the database. When you're building something, that's the thing you're updating in the database. The instance is just that you've shown it more than one time probably. Then after that, here's something else. We have, this is the connecting grid ID and its index. So I know this is on building connecting grid 0 and there's the value for it for the ID. Notice each one of these 4 items put in this scene all have the exact same connecting grid index and ID. Made it easy to click on something and know what it's part of. Yes, in fact, we've done some things. We're building this like a WordPress product so that it basically, one WalkTheWeb website in 3D gaming scene can connect to another gaming scene and use plugins, and we can do the whole thing on that side of things. You can create a plugin so that you can share cars with both scenes, for example. And then you can also do create a building over here or this golf game, and all of a sudden you can take it in a scene on your site and drop it right into your scene and use it on yours to attract people to your site. Somebody can play a round of golf. So that's the kind of stuff that we do with this stuff. So that's kind of the naming scheme and why when you click on an item, I can tell you exactly what connecting grid it's part of and what item it is and what instance it is. But as for connecting to WordPress sites, one of the things I have so far is I'm connecting to WordPress sites as stores that have WooCommerce, and you're allowing connections, and it actually creates a shared key between the two, and you can take the items from the store and actually drop them right into your scenes. So that makes it where you can do a 3D store very, very cool and easy. Yeah, exactly. On the idea of VR, just so all of you can see this too, we not only have that piece in place, but we have different cameras, for example. First person, we have the follow camera. We have a scene camera, which backs it off a little farther. We have a selfie camera, so you can look back at yourself. Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm hoping. I'm betting a lot on it. Very cool. Well, you know something? I've opened it up. It's open source. You can download a copy of the code. You can help me code it if you come up with ideas that need to be done into the core. I'll add them to the core just by you telling me and passing me some code. If you want to build a plugin that works under this site, it all works. It's multiplayer. It's multi-avatars. You can choose from all these avatars. Here's the other part. You can also go, hey, poor man's 3D. There we go. 3D glasses. You can also go to VR headset, And then you can also do the headsets with the game pads. And I do have to show you this. I know that I'm just searching Oculus only because I know it comes up with this. But Babylon already has direct support for many different specific game controllers. And all I have to do is add them to my drop-down list and then tell it a list of ones that you can select from, and if you choose that, it'll already be fine-tuned for that particular headset, for that VR headset. So this will be in my code soon. It's not there yet, but since Babylon supports it, it's not that hard for me to implement it. I just don't have anything to test it with, so. Oh, awesome. Well, help me build it. Yeah, we can do, like I said, plugins. I'm thinking freemium, just like WordPress does. You create a plugin, somebody gets, let's say, a 3-hole golf course. But if you want to open up all 18 holes that we created, then you pay X dollars subscription a year, or you pay a one-time fee to unlock it on your server. So there's stuff like that. The developers can make money off of games they create. But the thing is, you don't have to create a whole game. Those big gaming companies, first of all, they made something outrageous like $108 billion last year in games. So there's a lot of money on the table. But the other part is it takes a lot of programmers a lot of time to actually create a game. So by going in here and taking something where we've offloaded the scene and you can focus on game components, you don't have to worry about the multiplayer. We're handling that at this level. The communication, if it's multiplayer and you see somebody else in the scene, you can click on them and talk with them, and it opens up a chat down here and you can actually type back and forth. We'll enhance that. We'll do some voice over IP. We'll do all kinds of cool things in plugins as we go. I'm hoping somebody jumps in, steps up and says, okay, I want to build the social network of this thing and create like social network components you can drop in as a plugin. So I'm kind of like showing what can be done, and I'm hoping people jump in on certain things and perfect them, because of course I can't perfect everything, but I can definitely make the core really nice. Okay, so that's the combinations. That's where we're working on it. But we have these different pieces. So freemium websites, you can make money on doing plugins and unlocking more features. Let's say you created a car, you can unlock it where somebody can sit in the seat next to you, another avatar. Or let's say instead of driving the Jeep, you can drive the Ferrari if you unlock these codes. So there's ways you can make money. The other thing is you can use this as a tool and create 3D websites for businesses. and then they can be dropped into games. Let's say I know somebody that has a t-shirt shop. It's real easy. I can use this as an interface, build something in Blender that's some real high-end fancy building, drop it into a scene, use this connector to WooCommerce, and now you can put all the WooCommerce parts right into your scene. They maintain it in WooCommerce, but yet in 3D, all their products are on the shelves, ready to go, ready to sell. People can click on them and purchase them right from within the app, but it actually opens their website on the other site. I did this before and I've worked on it a bit, but let me see if, I don't even know if this is going to open. I think I set this up. I don't know if it's HTTPS or not. This is on my previous version, so this is not as updated as the code that you just saw me work on. First, when you come in there, if you're anonymous, you get a choice of 2 avatars. If you log in on a site, then you get a choice of 10 avatars. You can't name your avatar unless you do it. See, it's anonymous because you haven't logged in. But you can color them. And you can say, oh, I want to do the joints, this color, whatever color you pick. And you can also do the surface. So you can customize them a little bit. Pick whatever you're going to do. I can't handle too bright. You can also, with your avatars, change the animations that they use. For example, you can say, I want, hey, a happy walk. Now, when you walk, he walks happy. You can say, sneaky walk. Whatever. You can customize them. There's about 200 animations that you can use to pick whatever you want to do to make them do what they want. You can also do optional gestures. You can add an animation and select from a list of optional things that include, there's all kinds of things here. Everything from a simple wave. And these optional ones, all you have to do is click here and you can fire them off by holding down your mouse button on them. Okay, so those are optional ones. Currently, I'm limiting that to 4 optional ones, and you can change them at any time, even while you're in a scene. But I may do some more with that and unlock some more as we find the limits of how much we want to load at any one time. But so far, we're good. Okay, and when you're all done with that, close your avatar and you load into a scene. I tell you, hey, I'll give you poor man's 3D really quickly, $5 for 3 pairs. If somebody wants to buy them, they can click on that and buy it from my site. Otherwise, no big deal. Okay, when this here was a rudimentary store that I created before I started importing from Blender. So my next generation of this is actually going to be using Blender. Okay, but for example, and it'll be using the latest updated version of the app. Right now I'm doing the sneaky walk. It's kind of funny. And doors open as you walk up on it. And when you're in here, the other day I did a routine thing. I was actually using Blender to create a new counter for a scene similar to this. See, this one doesn't even run as fast as mine. I do have to tell you also, remember, I did not close this version, which is still running in the background, and this version. So I'm actually running 3 versions at once. So that does have some effect on how fast things work. My computer's streaming and running 3 versions of it. Okay, I created a categories. This actually gets read off of your other website. And let's say if I pick whatever product, it changes what's on the shelves to be what's ever in that category. If you don't have enough products in that category, it'll repeat whatever you can. If there's more than one product, it does this. You can highlight them and it'll tell you what your short descriptions are on the website. So as your customer, let's say your store owner, goes into WordPress, they actually update their names of their products or they update the price, which happens to be down there. I'm staying a little far away. Let's get a little bit closer here. See, we have the price down there. This is kind of small. I normally would do these a little bigger. Also, add to cart. What happens is this. If I say read more, it opens up their website in an iframe within your site. You're actually using the shopping cart on their original site, which also means, notice how the shopping cart is empty. I can just close that out. And if I say add to cart, it opens this up and actually puts it in the cart, and you're looking at the cart. If somebody decides to, hey, I'm ready to buy that, All they have to do is proceed to checkout, boom, and they're out of there. And the order came in on your WordPress site. So you didn't have to do anything extra here. You're just displaying the products and showing them off to your customer. So then you can, proceed to checkout and boom, you can buy it. Or if you close it, you can go shop for more products. At any time, you can read more, or you can just look at your, move your mouse over it and you can see the descriptions of the product, the short description. You can also click at any time, any of these categories. Even all will give you everything that's in their store and pop up different products. I'm getting better at loading these faster because I'm preloading some of the data. And so that kind of loads faster sometimes. The other thing is you get ready to leave the store. If you walk up to a counter, notice there's a link on the counter for View Shopping Cart. I also put this next to the exit. So if they start to leave, oh, I didn't buy those products, they can click on it and get reminded. They open the cart, they can purchase the products. And like I said, since I'm not interfering with this, I'm not in between the security of it. The security is still the security of their website. It is purchased on their website. Yes, I am. Yes, we're loading the data the same as we do the load zones of the houses. We do a JSON call. What I did was in WordPress. Let's see, HTTP. I'm trying to think of what site. www. Here we go. On this site, for example, this is a default WordPress installation. So it has the default parts and stuff that WordPress uses. If I go in here, what I have is I have a WalkTheWeb thing that I loaded. And what this does is it does things like it sets the permissions. It tells you what sites you're hosting. This is the new version I'm working on, so that one's not done. I have a couple versions of this. Let's go to the site that we were just at. Okay, so livingwell.com. This particular site, notice even if I open up this, that product that I put in there is there because I'm using the same site. So you can open these in different tabs, or you can open them in a iframe within the page and it'll still do it. I'm going to go ahead and log in just so I can show you this. And I have, this is available on WordPress already under WalkTheWeb, but you can go there and I have a WalkTheWeb 3D store. What it does is we have create a 3D store, and within 5 minutes you can create a brand new 3D store using some templates that I built. Otherwise, here's your permissions, and it's different things. You have the key that you're using back and forth to your 3D site, and you also have a WooCommerce key that has been assigned to this for this to allow it to use the WooCommerce products from the WooCommerce API. So we have a degree of permissions on that side. We have the 3D websites, and it's using a list here, and it'll tell you which websites we've created and which ones we've tested or did whatever with. And it's by my login, so basically I'm seeing a couple other things I created. But basically it has your 3D websites, Living Well, for example, and there's also other aliases that name comes up under, custom domain name. And we have some upgrades and stuff. But see, this this allows it to, I basically use the WooCommerce API in that WordPress app to be the connector of JSON information to the 3D store. So when I look on the shelves here, and I'm seeing different products on these shelves and descriptions and all the data, that's actually done as a JSON call when I walk into the building or when I change what's on the shelves. It's a JSON call back to the WordPress site, and it loads the latest all the time. So that's what it's doing. It's using a JSON call to connect the two things together. Now, this scene right here isn't the fastest. This is using my old code before I did so many updates. So when I update this to the new version, which I'm going to be doing shortly, the one that you get available through the open source, when I update using that code, then basically you're going to get it. You're going to be able to do everything you want from there, and you're going to be able to use all these menu options and everything else on the sites. So that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing in the different pieces. I have a little bit more cleanup to do on my camera views with this particular new release I'm working on. To tell you what it was, when I rotated objects in the scene with the world view, turns out the avatar was oriented 90 degrees off of what everything else was. So when I told my avatar to face the same direction as another object, I was 90 degrees out of phase. So what I did was I made the correction to the avatar so that the base is always the same direction, but the avatar was 90 degrees off on the base. So when I rotated them straight, I had to fix the animations. I have to fix when you add a new object in the scene where in front of you is. I have to set up all these different pieces and make sure that it's all in place. So that's just the way I'm doing it. There's a bunch of different pieces I have to do to make it all set up right. But that's what it is. So I'm correcting some of the different anime cameras. Like, for example, if I go to first-person camera, it's not moving with his head, and it didn't go first-person right now. But it can go to follow camera, no problem at all. So I have a little bit more work to do with the first-person camera. It isn't parenting on his head like it's supposed to be. And that's some stuff I'm working on. In fact, I bet if I refresh the screen, it'll probably work. So I'll fix those things before I release this next version of it. But like I said, I aligned the avatars to be in the same matrix of rotation as the world grid. Okay, any questions? I've spoken a lot. I've spilled my guts on a lot of parts. I know it's overwhelming at first. Don't worry about that. I got your back. And I'll tell you this, for anybody working with me, if you go out and sell a site to some customer, a business or whatever, and you're working on it and you say, oh my God, I need this. Hey, I'm your guy. I'll get you taken care of. No problem at all. I'm going to make sure that you can do this stuff. I'm going to make sure you can jump in there. I'm going to make sure that you can... I've got your back. So if you promise them something and it's something you're working on and you need some help on things, then definitely I got your back and I'll help you do it. If you found something that you run into trouble, hey, I'll work it out. I'll figure it out. If I have to, we'll go back to the Babylon guys and we'll help them, get them involved too. They have a nice, nice amount of support and everything there. But I got your back. So sell your sites, do what you want, create plugins, and I'll help you get there. You know it. Okay, but I'm in it full time, and your success doing things is my success also. So that's why I'm in it. I do it full time. When I'm not here programming in front of you, I'm programming and figuring out where else I've got to fix things and track things down and make them look right, and make sure the animations work. But the whole idea is to have the interface to make it easy to do things. Then I'm just enabling you to do what you do best. Write code and create things in Blender and drop them in here and being able to... This will be a distribution center. You create something and then all of a sudden you can drop it in here as a plugin and all of a sudden it goes out to everybody that has a website. It's available to them. That's exactly what WordPress did. They made it where it was a platform for distribution of plugins. It's a great way to do it. So that's where we are. That's what we've got. I'm getting hungry. Haven't even had breakfast yet, and I'm in California, which makes it 11 a.m. almost. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a day here. But like you said, you followed me, and I really appreciate you following me. Thank you for following me. I've had, I think, 3 of you new ones today, and you've asked some great questions, and I always appreciate that. You get me started, then, hey, if I talk too much, it was your fault. No, just kidding. But no, I appreciate the questions. I'm here to help you guys be successful at whatever you want to do with this product. I'm also constantly enhancing it, constantly fixing things. You can download the source code. You'll get the updates. I even have it set up to alert you when an update's available. It'll tell you when I've released the next version, and you can click on it when it's stable, and then they'll come out here and you can click on it and do it. If you want a not stable version, you can always download GitHub and copy over the stuff. I've made it really easy where you don't have to worry about what you're copying over, because even on GitHub in my site, you can always copy over everything in core, everything in the root directory, and content is the one where you have your files that have been added to it. Every once in a while, I'll add something to my basics that are in there. Some of the standard stuff, I'll throw something in there that I need. But otherwise, config is your configuration file for your site. So that file right there is your configuration. I won't be adding anything else in there. That tells it where your database is and the site ID and a couple other things that help us track stuff. So it's connect and core and the root files basically. And then the occasional in the content folder. The content folder looks like this. Users shouldn't be there. I'll track down why it did that. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back. Okay, and basically in this folder, anything that gets uploaded from using WalkTheWeb goes into uploads. Under that, you'll see things that are specific for a building, a community, a thing, or if a particular user uploaded something, then it puts things there too. That's the 4 categories of where all the stuff is that gets uploaded using your site. Plugins, that's exactly what it is. I'm creating some different plugins, and I'll drop these out there open source when I get them done too, so people can use them as models for creating something they're doing. So that's kind of the idea of doing these. And then system, this is the stock photos, images that are used in the interface, icons used for the animations that I give you for free. I don't even have them all done yet. Some Babylon items that everybody can have just by starting up their program, so they have some default items to work with. Our 10 different avatars that we start with. And a whole bunch of animations, as you can tell, 176 animations in the gestures folder, and another, it's 176 files in this one too. So notice that it's a Babylon and a manifest for each one, so that's half as many actual files. So we have over 150 animations. Okay, so that's what it is, 175 animations or whatever. Okay, so that's what we have. We've got a good number of them. We have a lot of pieces. That's what's in your content folder. That's how we work it. And we've gone through quite a few different sections today. The prime is your core files that make everything run. When you init, here's your init events, including all your event listeners. On load events tell it the sequence that it does when it first starts up. We have different things. Then we have some that are specific. All of our molds, building, community, and thing molds. Oh, I do have to tell you this. One of the things I did, okay, so when I first created it, the molds actually all have the same design and layout, but if I put them all in one table, I can picture that dude, you are so cool, Direct Relief Charity. Awesome. Awesome. You are so cool. I appreciate that, definitely. But the molds, they all have the same design, but I can imagine that that table could get very large, and if you're hosting this on your own, sometimes very large tables, you need extra horsepower on your databases. So what I did on purpose was separate it into community, buildings, and things. I know that certain tables are going to get bigger than others by doing it that way, but by breaking them into 3 different tables, we were able to distribute the load into different tables instead of making it where your database had to be pretty bulky in one place. So that's kind of why I broke it down into different things, but yet maintain the same design of the different molds. And the reason I call it molds is this. A mesh is the object you see on the screen. I wanted a name that is not just the mesh, but it's the wrapper and everything that goes with it. So I called it mold, which is the definition of what creates the mesh and all the properties about it that we've added using WalkTheWeb. So the good part about that is if I say mold, you know it's all the extra functionality too. If I'm talking about a mesh on the screen or something, I'm specifically talking about that shape and that object that you're looking at. If I'm talking about a mold, I'm talking about all the extra properties of like when it loads on a screen, how it gets scaled, anything else that you've thrown in from the definition, even before, like conceptually, these items might be added to the screen. Now you walk closer, boom, it's loaded. So, that's the kind of stuff that we definitely did. Okay, so that's that kind of stuff. We went over a bunch of these files. So mold, engine is our Babylon stuff and all other JavaScripts that we've imported. Coverings are, just like we have molds over meshes, we have coverings over materials. Coverings are all the properties that go along with creating a material even when it's not being created yet. And then we have avatars. It also makes it easy if I search in my code for something with mold, then I don't have to worry about bringing back all the stuff that says mesh because that gets you all the Babylon stuff too. Okay, so avatars, obviously what that is. Automations are sequences of events that being able to trigger a sequence of events and create them. I do not have that in the interface yet, but I played around with it behind the scenes. It's not ready. Admin, there's our extra admin stuff. Admin editor is our main code for when you're in admin mode. That's like the common file is for everything else. And just think of this, when you're in admin, the core and common and all those files are loaded. Everything that you load to browse the site, yeah, we're doing streaming and making the videos, so I'm kind of doing a little bit of both in place. How that goes. But so the two pieces, everything that you do when you just browse a site is loaded, but then admin adds on these extra strips to do all the administration and extra menus and all this extra functionality so that you can create and work with your sites. So browsing is where most of the customers will be. Admin is where the site owner is going to be, the host, whoever created the site or is working on the site or maintaining the site. So admin is going to be the common code that is under admin mode. We have an admin init in case there's things that only initialize during admin. And then we also have an admin input in case there's functions that you only want available when you're in admin mode. Okay, so that's basically the core stuff. We have our action zones. And in each one of these files, one of the things you're going to see is add action zone list and then basic action zones. These are the various parts. For example, a load zone. Oh, that's a load animation. We have a load zone. We have a load animations zone. We have a sliding door zone. We have, after the sliding door, we have a swinging door zone. We have things for futuristic, but we have things for mirrors to pick an object of what's going to be inside of if you walk in front of a mirror, what objects are going to be included to show inside the mirror. Anything in that area, including if an avatar walks through it, they'll show in the mirror, that kind of stuff. The add functions within each one of these do three things. First of all, it creates the drop-down list that gets used in admin to tell you that it even exists and can be added to a scene. For example, our load animations. And we're using a certain array to do it. Then it gets put into that drop-down list. The other part is add the action zone. And this is where it actually tells us which file on that other page, the basic action zones, it tells us which file to use to actually generate that item. And then basically it gets returned to whatever code called for it and asked for it to be created. Then the next section is set new action zone defaults. So those first two sections basically are creating the item. Action zone defaults are when I tell it to add a load zone on the screen, I need to know what the common values are in our forms and updatable on the screen for the interface. So it tells us basic default values when it builds one. Second is the form fields. This is when we have that form in the menu on the side when we're working on something, it depends on what you click. Like if I'm working on, for example, this, then here's the objects that pertain to this item. But if I click on this, it's different objects, and notice it said box position instead of 3D object and position, 3D object position and stuff. All those settings go right here. It tells you what to define things as, the inner HTML of this object, the form title. You can tell the title what it needs to be, swing distance on this particular item. It tells it what to show and what to hide on that form. So pretty cool stuff. And then basically after that, it goes through for each one of these items that you had on the top. So like for a swinging door, we hide x-axis rotation because it's not needed. It's a block area that we don't need. You just rotate by X and Z. You don't rotate the Y-axis because the swinging door is on the Y-axis. Makes sense. And then basically it will show swinging door div and direction that you rotate it and the speed of the rotation areas. That's kind of how we define these areas. And that's it. So we have creating the object and tying it to the actual function that does it. We have how to mask the default values of each object that you create, and then how to mask the form to only show you what you need when you're editing that particular object. And that goes for action zones. Coverings has the same setup. Molds has the same setup. Each one are listed in this with those three areas, and then the basic molds are the list of all the different objects as they create them. So now you get the basic walkthrough of all the script areas of this thing. That's, in a nutshell, that's actually a really good area. That's a good walkthrough. Should break it down, should make it pretty easy for you to do different things. Avatars have kind of the same thing. We have one basic avatar loading file that we use right now in the basic avatars. So we use that, we bring it in, and then we teach it to load all the animations from there. And here's all the pertinent animation stuff. I tried to separate them into different files because I wanted to make it easy for everybody to I wanted to make it very easy for you to be able to jump right to something that you need, look up the code, or even see how it works. And like I said, I tried to use plain English with the titles. I tried to name things very responsibly. The more I named it correctly, the less extra code you need, or the less I have to put comments in the code to make it readable. So, okay, so that gives you a full walkthrough. That talks you through a bunch of different places. Yeah, we're getting a lot of cool things going here and a lot of pieces. I'm going to end the broadcast here, but I'll be hanging around the chat for a little bit longer. And I want to thank everybody for bearing with me today and all you new followers today. It's awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. And I'm going to keep building, and feel free to download code, use it, build things, do whatever you want to. And I'll keep integrating it back into the core as we need to, and I'll support what you're working on. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.